The first taste of rare bourbon you finally got your hands on. That's nice. At Caskers.com, we make this experience easy. Caskers is a one-stop spirit curator with an impressive selection of exclusive, sought-after, rare, and household names in the realm of premium spirits and champagne. Discover the top flavors of the year now by going to Caskers.com and using code WELCOME10 for $10 off your first purchase. Get $10 off your first purchase with code WELCOME10 at Caskers.com.
Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hello, I'm Carol Fleck, and on behalf of the Attitude team, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD Experts presentation titled How to Teach Self-Regulation and Executive Function Skills for Independent Living. Leading today's presentation is Kristin Seymour. We're having technical difficulties, so Kristin won't be able to appear on camera, but we'll still have her voice and her slides. Kristin is a clinical nurse specialist at Barnes Jewish Hospital at Washington University Medical Center. She is also a coach, blogger, and a contributor in the documentary about ADHD called The Disruptors. She credits her ADHD with making her a better nurse. In today's webinar, you'll learn about strategies to boost your students' executive functions, including self-control, time management, working memory, task initiation, and organization. These age-appropriate tools and techniques can help your child, whether they are in elementary school, middle school, or high school. We'd like to begin today's webinar by asking this poll question to our live audience. How would your child finish this sentence? My greatest challenge at school is feeling fill in the blank. Please select your answers and comment in the text box under the video player to tell us more. You'll see the poll results when you submit your response. And while you do that, I'll point out that live participants may submit questions anytime during the live event. To download the slides, click on the Event Resources section of your webinar screen. If you're interested in the Certificate of Attendance option, look for instructions in the email you'll receive about an hour after the live broadcast. A transcript of today's event will be made available in the coming week. If you're listening in replay or podcast mode, visit attitudemag.com and search podcast 445 to access the slides, the webinar replay, the Certificate of Attendance option, and the webinar transcript. If you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe to sign up for our latest spring issue. The proven strategies in our cover story, The ADHD Guide to Love, will deepen your bond with your partner and help you to overcome common challenges. You'll also learn smart techniques to communicate effectively with your child's teachers. And top experts discuss eating disorders in teens, who is at risk, and what caregivers can do. Sign up now for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. Finally, the sponsor of this webinar is Accentrate. Accentrate is a dietary supplement formulated to address nutritional deficiencies known to be associated with ADHD. It contains omega-3 fatty acids in phospholipid form, the form already in the brain. This brain-ready nutrition helps manage inattention, lack of focus, emotional dysregulation, and hyperactivity without drug-like side effects. Click the link on the screen or visit phoenixhealthscience.com to learn more. Attitude thanks our sponsors for supporting our webinars. Sponsorship has no influence on speaker selection or webinar content. So without further ado, I'm so pleased to welcome Kristin Seymour. Thank you so much for joining us today and leading this discussion.
Hi, Carol. Thank you so much, and good afternoon. Sorry about the technical difficulties with the camera. I had a few things to show and tell, but we will do our best. When we're talking about executive function and ADHD regulation and adaptive strategies, it's really important that we first identify if there is an ADHD diagnosis, an executive function condition, versus a neurotypical student or person who is just distracted. So it's just kind of important to keep that in top of your mind. Like, what are we really dealing with? What is ADHD? Just a brief reminder, it's a brain difference, an imbalance of neurotransmitters. And the most important thing here that people always say, well, I'm forgetful or I'm impulsive. It's when those 6 or more characteristics, or if you're over 17, 5 or more characteristics are present and they're not developmentally appropriate, but that they're feeling defeat in more than 2 or more areas. So, for instance, if they're just struggling in school or in sports or at home, that's one thing. But when they're feeling defeated at school and at home or on the field, that's when we need to kind of intervene. No one really outgrows ADHD, but research shows, quote, 20% outgrow it, but they really don't. Those are the 20% of people that have learned to manage their symptoms and harness them for the power of, the superpower, and to move forward and do great things. I like to think of ADHD as my superpower because I'm able to multitask, execute a ton of things, and hyper focus, which is one of our best qualities. Now, the reason I want to point out this PET scan, it's like a heat map, if you will, of it's a proton enhanced tomography, a PET scan of the neurohormones. So we have, red, yellow, and blue and green are our colors here. And if you notice in the ADHD subject, there is quite a deficit. There's not enough of the red and of the blue. And when you go to the respective Venn diagram, when we have a deficit of dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin, are key neurohormones for executive function and autoregulation. When there's a deficit, if you look down in here on these italics, when there's a deficit, people are hyper compulsive, foggy, a lot of self-doubt, very obsessive. So when you correct this and bring them back up to a normal level, a homeostatic typical level, with things like exercise, things that are stimulants, caffeine, super complex vitamin B. Actually, there was a study in 2007 in the Lancet that super B mimicked the outcome of Ritalin, of methylphenidate in the respective subjects. So if we have things to improve our own secretion of dopamine and norepinephrine, then we're going to be able to better compensate and execute. So things like gel pens, things like movement, caffeine, all those things will stimulate dopamine, norepinephrine. So as I was talking with the editor, Carol, going back, we could probably spend an hour on each of the 8 executive functions, how they pertain to ADHD, and how we can work through each one. Then we could probably have a whole day on how we can intervene and support executive function in a lifelong learner, a student, or in the adult. So what I want to try to do is implement, incorporate these executive functions in each intervention I talk about in the slides. So when we talk about self-control, like, are we able to control our behavior? Self-monitoring, or we have checks and balances in place that are things working or not. Emotional control. Most of my patients, as Carol said, I'm a coach. Most of my patients struggle with emotional control as well as task initiation. Those are really my biggest focus when I get patients in my office. Working memory, short-term memory, recall, and time management. These are all extremely important and are going to be tied into everything we discussed today. So I want to ask you all something. Who can be good when they're tired? No one. Everyone does better when they're rested and they have 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And if you can't, at least get 6 hours of good rest. We know that it takes an ADHDer 90 to 120 minutes longer than a neurotypical individual to fall asleep at night into a REM sleep cycle. So when you have 25 to 50% of ADHDers that have a sleep disturbance, this is done by the Sleep Foundation. That was the latest research in February of 23. This can be falling asleep difficulty. This can be waking up in the middle of the night with ruminating thoughts, insomnia. With that amount of people having difficulty, I like to start with sleep. So the first thing to help your own ADHD symptoms and executive function is to have a good night's sleep with a white, green, or brown noise machine. The one on the slide is Yoga Sleep. It used to be Marpac Dome, and it's endorsed by the National Sleep Foundation. And what that does is it stimulates serotonin, which it sounds a lot like an airplane cabin. So I have it right here for you to hear. It sounds like this, and it's very soothing. It's got 2 settings, and it really, really gets the patient, the student or person to sleep. Patients at 72 years old to 4 years old love that. And oh, by the way, I have to say, I have no financial disclosures, no paid partnerships with anything I discuss today or in any of my work. These are just things that I have researched and are tried and true. So I have no financial disclosures. I forgot to say that. The sunrise alarm clock is fabulous. What that does is it works with your normal circadian rhythm. And let's say you set your alarm for 6 a.m. At 5:20, 40 minutes before the alarm goes off, the alarm clock will start to get brighter and brighter and brighter on its own to then mimic sunlight and wake up the body. So your neurons and all your body and all your little neurohormones are all starting to wake up before your eyes open and you hear the chime. So these are 2 really great ways to help a normal sleep wake pattern. And also there's something called Calm Gummies. They're a magnesium supplement. And that is a wonderful thing for nighttime as well. You don't want to be on melatonin, because melatonin, a lot of parents give that to their kids, and that causes basically your brain's going to stop producing melatonin because it's getting an outside source of it. So and then eventually it won't produce anymore. So you do not want to give melatonin consistently. But magnesium is totally fine to get. Structure. Structure refers to essential tools to help with time management. I cannot stand when people say, oh, just get more structure in her life, or, hey, you need to work on your time management. It's like, thanks, guys. I know that, but give me some actual real tools that will help. So today, we're going to give you examples of what works. So external controls like lists, receipts, in and out boxes, voicemails, texting yourself, Post-it notes. All of these are examples of structure and the controls that compensate for unreliable internal chaos in your brain. So ADHDers and people with executive dysfunction have brains that have a lot of noise in them. And when you have a lot of noise in your brain, it's hard to manage all of the other day-to-day tasks. So for instance, I have a notes app in my phone and I have my to-do list every single day on it, and there's such satisfaction with crossing it off. Things like in and out boxes, things like receipts. Take a picture of your receipt. If you're a professional and you're a working young man or woman and you're a professional and you have to expense things at the end of the month, take pictures of the receipt so that you have a timestamp, an image of it, the date and the time of when it happens, so you don't lose your receipts. That's a wonderful way to kind of stay on top of it. Okay, so here's another example. Color code with organization and structure for organization. Color code your folders, your notebooks, your pens, your Post-its, so that you're visualizing and associating things. Using things like smelly pens or smelly pencils or those Mr. Sketch highlighters. All of those things stimulate dopamine because they're satisfying. So when you smell a marker, or you give a child a stencil to write with, and it smells like apples, that's going to stimulate them, and it's going to commit what they're writing or erasing to memory. They're going to associate that math problem with apples and how that smells, and they're going to be more committed to remembering it. It really helps with short-term memory recall. So when we're talking about working memory techniques, everybody knows, like, associating things to, like, a place you've been, or visualizing something by color coding it, rhyming or singing a commercial. Like, if there's nothing wrong with my my roof, but I will tell you the entire Frederick Roofing song, and I can tell you the phone number just because it rhymes and is a sing song and it's appealing to my brain, so it commits it to memory. People should rhyme and sing their things they need to memorize in class. Making an acronym such as math. Mistakes allow learning to happen. Things like that. Categorizing, clump and chunking things, which we will talk about later. Finding a pattern in something. Those are all ways that we can really kind of hone in on, ooh, I remember that because I remember it was on a pink Post-it and I jotted it. That's what that means. So another way that this is an example of one student who working memory techniques for association and visualization of her schedule. And this is a block, a busy schedule, a high school student, and we have her schedule. And then we also have below it, she has the respective key, if you will. You have pink. So all of her notebooks and pens and highlighters for this class for math with Mr. Frizola is all pink. Then she has the orange, and then she has never has them on the same day with the same color. That is a great way to get organized and stay organized. I always talk about an inner coach. Bring out your inner coach. Think, okay, what would my inner coach tell me? That's your best self. And so that's kind of, she wrote that on there, bring out your inner coach. I apologize for the hammering next door. This is just not our day. But anyway, bullet journals and dialogue journals. These are excellent ways to help not only with emotional control, but with if you want to remember things and you can do it your way. So I always tell the patients, if I have these little black books and they're pretty small and they're lined paper because ADHDers, we never write straight. We always are on an angle. And they can kind of jot and bullet their thoughts or what they have to do that day, top tasks, prioritize, things like that. That helps with working memory. Okay. But then you have something called a dialogue journal. And this is different. You can have this between your student or your whatever, a student and a teacher, or a child and a parent. The bullet journal is you to you. It's between yourself. But the other one, the dialogue journal, is a wonderful way to communicate with a student. Hey, Abby, you're working really hard. I love having you in my class. Or, let's say Johnny wants to write his teacher, Dear Miss Smith, I really struggle when you call on me in front of everyone. It's a way the child can displace those thoughts from their brain to paper, and then they can show it to the teacher if they're having a hard time explaining it. So it's a wonderful way to promote dialogue. One thing that I think is really important for teenagers and people who are so hard on themselves, ADHDers have a lot of shame. And what I really want my patients to do is to journal how they would talk. How would you talk to your future self? How do you see your future self? And journal that, because those are things that will be in their mind and that they have a constant reminder about. So those are some good examples of how to kind of manage your emotions. This is a modified math test. I'm kind of, I go a little sideways on this talk because as an ADHD, I'll get an idea and then I'll stick it in there. When I was talking about clumping and chunking earlier, or categorizing, this is an example. And if we all stop and think about what is a test? It's an assessment. It's an evaluation to see how you're learning the material. It's not, can Johnny do 30 problems in 30 minutes? The teacher's really trying to know, do you understand the work or not? So in 5th grade, my daughter had this teacher and she really struggled in math. And you can see here, not only do we have the dialogue happening at the top of the page, we have a teacher who's flexible. This was not written in an IEP or anything. She had a 504, I believe at the time. He just on his own accord knew to take out the easy problems, leave the hard problems, and assess, does this kid get the material? And she does. And she did great. So at the top of the page, she says, I may not be good at math, but I sure love your class. And he writes back to her, and I love having you in my class. So I just feel like that just helps with emotional, just positive feedback, and it's a win. And I think that's a way to clump and chunk. You do the harder ones and take away the easy ones. So again, regarding emotional control, this is when we're talking about how does your engine run? And when I say engine, I mean their brain. How is their brain running? So, this is a picture of a classroom at one of our private schools here in St. Louis, Whitfield School, shared with permission. I love this. It looks busy, but I love this picture because when we're talking about the engine, we're talking about lighting, seating, environment, noise, all of that, how things feel in the room, temperature. And this is a great one because if you look at the lights over to the right, those are much more warm, dim light. So perhaps the students that come in later in the day, the teacher turns those on because the majority of them like the dimmer lights versus the loud, bright fluorescent lights. So how does your engine run? I always try to tell parents and teachers and young adults, go and understand how do you learn and calm your brain the best? So I have something called a Scentsy in my office, and it actually is a really, really yummy smelling scent. So when people come to my office, it smells really, delicious. And what happens is when you stimulate the olfactory nerve, the smell, it helps with memory recall. So they end up talking a lot more and they talk about memories and it's a wonderful trigger for that discussion. So that's another way. The environment, how is their engine running? The lighting, do you have a pedal desk, a standing desk, a round ball desk, seat. And I just think it's important to note all of those things. Again, how does their engine run? This is going to help when you have a child who's very dysregulated and very anxious and very angry or frustrated. When you have bright lights and lots of noise and kids kind of moving all around the classroom, that's going to be aggravating. So we need to kind of find out what's the best way. So we look at lighting. We have to think about music. And the thing about music is soft music, like piano concertos just by themselves, something without a lot of excess noise, that's simple to listen to is really ideal. But it's really, what does that patient want to listen to? And whenever I tell them, you can have a playlist to do your homework to, I encourage them to do a 30-minute playlist and then put their phone in the other room so they're not fiddling with the phone trying to pick a new song, because that's distracting. But the music stimulates dopamine, therefore helps them with working memory. Things like a brain gym and a sensory diet. What I really mean with that is just an infinity walk, trying to get your right and left brain to communicate, as well as the infinity walk helps with your vestibular ocular reflex, the cortex in the brain. It helps to strengthen all that coordination and all that helps with your brain learning how to remember things. Sensory diet. Basically, that just to me is talking about weighted blankets, weighted vests, doing things that involve coordination like jumping rope. And the thing about how many of you know that when you go get an x-ray or you go to the dentist, how good it feels, or it doesn't, but how good it feels to have the lead apron placed over you. It just is that perioceptive calming response that we receive when we're swaddled or have that heaviness on. So sometimes a weighted lap pad is good to have on a child's lap who frequently gets up in class, or a weighted blanket for the student or the patient that can't sleep well at night and is constantly getting up. Let's see here. So with the infinity walk, I'll just tell you, you keep your eyes on one subject, one object, and you do not move your eyes, and you walk in a figure 8 pattern. That's how you do that. With regard to emotional control, I think everybody could tell me even better than I could tell you that emotional self-talk is so common in ADHD patients, and anxious thought processes are very present in ADHDers. We tend to overthink things. We tend to spiral down that rabbit hole, and we are in control of our thoughts. And too many people do not know and do not understand and do not think that they are in control of their thoughts. You can control what you think about. And I think that unless you have an underlying obsessive compulsive disorder or severe anxiety or depression, maybe this does not pertain to you as much, but everybody typically has the ability to control what they're thinking about and compartmentalize it. And I'll explain that in a minute. Emotional impact. There's a huge impact academically and socially when we have this usually negative self-talk. We need to be positive self-talk because, as I was sharing with a colleague last night, our strengths whisper and our weakness screams. And I feel like a lot of these ADHDers are always thinking about what they're not good at. And we need to be positive when we're talking to ourselves. Rejection sensitive dysphoria is a real thing. And it is an extreme emotional sensitivity that we are fear of rejected or actually are rejected and falling short of what we expect or someone else expects, and it can be debilitating. And a lot of us are hypersensitive for sure, but this rejection sensitive dysphoria is a real thing, and it's an extreme emotional sensitivity, like over the top. The only thing that really helps with this are MAOI inhibitors. It's a medication, or guanfacine. Otherwise, talk therapy can help, but it's not always the answer. Here's some just basic reminders for people who have those negative thoughts, negative self-talk. When we are overthinking, we need to write out our thoughts. Anxious, meditate. And I don't mean get an app out and an app out and do some formal meditation. Just take a minute to be mindful of where you are. Be mindful of your breath. Be mindful of those. Go look out the window. Just that will help. Being tired, take a power nap. If you're sad, work out. If you're really stressed, walk. If you're angry, listen to music. Lazy, reduce screen time. And if you're burnt out, read. And I mean read something you want to read, not work. Okay, so when people say, oh, that, Sally, or, she's so emotional, she's 0 to 100, blah, 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 in the classroom or at home, these are actual real tools that will help. And these are quick. My people who I love, my tribe of ADHDers, they are not people that can spend 30 minutes understanding something. We are now and not now are our time zones, and ready, fire, aim instead of ready, aim, fire. So these are quick things that will help a patient or a student get more comfortable in their own brain. So first of all, stop and not. I learned this from Ned Hallowell. He always tells me, Kristin, just stop and not. Imagine a stop sign and then not go there. You got to think about YBP, your big picture. You don't want to be the kid with a target on your back. You don't want to be in the timeout room. Stop and not go there. And then grounding, we'll talk about that in a minute. I've got a slide on that. Following the dot, it's a laser dot for little kids. A flash pass, and then I will show you examples of those. And then you always want to provide clear, simple 1 and 2 step instructions without competing distractions, and learn to compartmentalize. When I say compartmentalize, this is not healthy in depression, but it's very healthy in ADHD. And to make a very long explanation short, compartmentalization is how I survive. You can basically take anything that's going on in your life that's good, not good, whatever, and you need to take those thoughts, those feelings, and put it in a compartment. A backpack on your back, put it in a little Tupperware container, a visual in your head, and literally put all of those emotions and thoughts and that task, whatever, aside. It doesn't mean don't come back to it. It doesn't mean it didn't happen, but it means right now my focus is this talk, right? So those other things that are going on, I need to put them to the side and then come back later to it. And then sometimes it's come back later when you're rested and when you have some other supports in place. Okay, so compartmentalization is just really taking big things and making them into smaller compartments and putting them to the side. So when we talk about grounding, okay, we're talking about a reset. And I like the word mind shift. We want to shift our mind into a better state. So if you start to feel that trigger, oh gosh, I'm never going to get this done, and we want to run into avoidance, you want to stop and think about 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. That very brief 2-minute long activity or tool or whatever practice, if you continue to do that, you have now de-escalated yourself, and shifted your mind into a much better place because you've distracted yourself out of the thought you were in. Okay, flash pass examples. I wish we had these in my meetings. This is a way that anyone, but specifically students of any age, can self-monitor and work with a teacher on getting a minute. And so basically this is an academic accommodation where you could flash up this flash pass, and without providing explanation and without having to make an excuse, the student can take 5 minutes to go out of the class quietly and not distract the class, and then return in 5 minutes. There are parameters to these things. They can only use maybe a class a week. They can't abuse it. They can't go out to the playground. I mean, there are rules within these, but these are really helpful for students who feel that little unsettling feeling and they need to take a minute. They're great. Some more, and I'm going to show you these actually. This is right here. This is a cell phone docking station for teachers or parents, whoever. They have smaller ones for families, for everybody to put their phone away for mealtime or for school. This is the red laser dot. So I asked a teacher once, how do you get your classroom so quiet so quickly? And she said, I take a red laser dot and I take it to the wall. I clap my hands to get their attention once, then they start to follow my laser dot on the wall. And as she's drawing pictures, and they have to guess what the picture is with their raising their hand. Before you know it, these kids are sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor, and they are quiet and following the dot. It's hilarious, and it works. These are fidget beads, the magnet fidget beads over there on the right. Those are wonderful. They're quiet. They're tactile stimulation, which will release dopamine and norepinephrine. It feels satisfying, as the kids say. The adults use these all the time in their places of work as well. Take a picture. Take a picture of receipts. Take a picture of assignments. Take a picture of your goal. Take a picture of what you want to achieve and then print it and keep looking at it for what your incentive. These daily reflections up here on the right, it says, my favorite activity today was blah. I am excited for tomorrow because of X. And then I did my best on X. And then you gave your day a rating. This is a wonderful way for elementary school and maybe not middle, but elementary school students to kind of end the day on a high note and really reflect on what went well, because typically these kids come home and they tell you the worst part about their day first. Also, I don't have it on a picture of it, but make a ta-da list instead of a to-do list. Ta-da, it feels good. It sounds happy. Okay, and then down here, this painter's tape. So this is like the best thing ever. You can use this to make squares on the rug where a student can't be anymore. You can also section off rooms to clump and chunk, getting things done. So it doesn't seem so overwhelming. This is just strength-based goal setting. So you go personal or academic or whatever kind of goal you would like. And then how are you going to do it? And then a timeline of when you're going to do it. I'm going to go a little quicker here for a minute. Make them move. Exercise and moving with ADHD is essential. There was a research study published last year, 22 and in 21, 2 different studies in the American Journal of Pediatrics. Movement stimulates dopamine and other neurohormones and helps short-term memory. In fact, 26 minutes of exercise daily for 8 weeks improved cognition and short-term memory and long-term memory recall in the subject studied, which is fascinating. Self-advocacy. So when you have like a boss you need to talk to because something's not going well, or a teacher, you really need to have a discussion in person. You can't interpret tone with text or email. You need to speak clearly, have good eye contact, being respectful. You need to take notes, rephrase, and thank them for their support if given. Being clean and organized is critical. This is an example of what I see all the time. A sloppy bag on the left, and then we ended up making it those manila folders. Parents wrote into this webinar before I did it, and they said, how do you keep them organized in high school? Well, this is how. None of them like binders. They like to slide their papers in. They just get the paper, and then they slide it in the backpack. So you just label the little folders, bring it home to a mothership, so to speak, put it in a big binder for cumulative reviews, and call it a day. This is way more organized and way easier. If a student says that a planner won't work, Yes, there will be one that will. You can find one that does. So this is the ideal one. It's a month overview with 2 days at a time. It's not overwhelming, but you know it's coming up. Then we have this one over here, the little girl who wrote the dates in purple and green. That is on her mirror of her bedroom. So she knows her plans. And this is a little youngster here that did the little Post-its. And every time she accomplishes them, she gets to throw the Post-it away when the things are accomplished. There's plenty of ways that you can organize yourself and attack these outcomes. When you have to do a schedule or a routine, I have only a couple minutes, but I want to get to this part. You need to work with your child on the schedule, involve them. Post-it, it needs to be visual. Put Post-it notes and reminders in the bathroom. Move their toothbrush to downstairs. Once they're downstairs, they stay down. They don't go back up. Those are just a few little tips. This is hard to read, but this is an incentivized chore chart. If you do this many chores, you have 180 points for the week, you get $10. Whatever you decide to do with your family. But these things have value. Feed the dogs is 2 points. Clear off the entryway, 3 points. Doing laundry, 10 points. So you kind of make it value added, and then you add them up at the end of the week, and then you get your total. All right. Homework tips. This is huge. Start with the hardest subject first, only for 30 to 40 minutes, followed by a 10-minute break. Set timers and alarms and repeat. Submit what is done, even if it's not completed, because half these kids don't know. They just need to submit what they have done if it's not totally finished yet. You need to jot when you're reading and always take 40 minutes after work or after school to have a decompression time, followed by starting with your work, your 30-minute and 10-minute plan. Backwards planning, this is awesome. You actually start like I did for this talk. I start with the day of the talk, and then I go backwards. Okay, now what do I need to get done by what date? And so then you're not going to be stuck with, tons of things to do, and this plans it for you. Jotting. 90% of my patients do not know how to jot. They don't know how to take notes very well when they're reading. This is a great example of how to jot what they're reading, so at the end of the chapter, they can go through and just see it all in a sum. The college questions I got, this is the optimal college schedule. It does not allow time to go back to the dorm or apartment. This is all your classes are clumped and chunked together, allowing for no time to run away and not come back and take a nap. Maintain your schedule, budget, and your room to be clean. Use that painter's tape to keep it clean. Go to class and you're going to pass. Email every teacher at the beginning of the semester for a time to meet with them, because they love to meet their students, whether it's 400-person lecture or a 10-person lab. Get to know your teacher. They'll have a name with the face. Use a desk calendar with goals and schedule. Erasable gel pens are a game changer. They're colorful, they're erasable, and the gel is so satisfying to write with, and it commits it to memory. Use colored font, use colored index cards. Tip, you have to schedule time for work. If you're taking 15 credit hours, plan on 15 homework hours, hence full-time student. One of my patients told me the only way he got his work done was he called his parents or one of his best friends, and he left his phone on speaker while he did all his work. He said the fact that they were listening to me and had to listen, and he felt accountability because they were listening to him work. So whatever it takes, but you have to get it done, or you will flunk out. Self-control and time management. You got to pack your man bags, sports bags, purse, equipment, water bottles the night before. Put them either in the car locked or by the back door. Never have less than a quarter tank of gas in the car. Make lunch the night before. Leave a note on the door or the car so you don't forget the lunch that's in the fridge. Shower at night. And huge right here, subscribe to toiletries. Too many of these kids get in there and don't have soap and don't have shampoo. This is like a recurring theme. You must subscribe every 3 months to toiletries and then have them in their bathrooms, whether they're in college, teenagers. It's a real thing. Dedicate a clean space for work. And then the last thing, not last, but we have to wrap in a minute here. Lock an extra medication dose in your car, in the glove box. Stimulant, allergy pill, whatever you're on. Operate by, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. It is so rude to be late. You guys need to, I always tell my patients, be early. Playlists for showers. If the kid showers too long, a lot of parents can't get them out. Make a 3-song playlist. That's about 12 minutes. When that last song hits, you better be rinsing and getting out. Laundry, divide it up into 2 days. Incentivize with your big picture. Cooler in the car for errands. If you're going to run by the grocery store, grab a bag of ice, get your groceries, throw it in there, and continue on your way. Then you don't have to go home and unload it. Auto refill all medicines for 90 days. And if it's a controlled substance, be sure you have your scripts post-dated and at the pharmacy. That way you can have, you can call the pharmacy when you're at the last layer of meds. And auto pay all your bills. Okay. And then set reminders for all tasks, use a planner, give every task a limit, a time limit, block out distractions. And the last slide, the rest of them are self-explanatory, is this. Every single time you need to do something, when you look at your day ahead, identify what needs to be done, prioritize in order of most important, delegate. Do what you're good at, delegate what you're not good at. Instacart your groceries. Ask your kids and friends, whoever, to help. Delegate. Then execute the plan. And then you do it. And then you also have to always go back and evaluate. What did I do well? What didn't go well? What went sideways? But that is how you do it. And then I've got these next couple slides are all just, you can read them. They're all just good sites and tools for they're good sites and tools for writing and staying on task. Again, I apologize. We had to go a little quick because of our time delay, but I know they wanted to take questions at this time.
Yeah. So before we start the Q&A, I'd like to thank Accentrate once more for sponsoring this webinar. I'd also like to share the results from today's poll question. Here's what you said. My child's greatest challenge is feeling 37% said overwhelmed, 22% said anxious, 14% said stressed, and 9% said tired. Kristin, will you repeat your recommendation for the magnesium supplement? You mentioned quite a few people asked about this. And can you repeat the name of the noise machine you mentioned as well?
Sure thing. So the magnesium, there's a bunch of them out there, but it's called Calm Gummy, and all it is magnesium, and it only has 1 gram of sugar in it, 5 calories, and depending on how old the child is the dose. So 1 gummy is for children 4 to 12, I believe. And then you can take up to 4 gummies for kids 13 and older. These are the best way to sleep. My daughters take them. I take them. Not every night. It would not hurt you to take it every night because it's a natural, it's a vitamin, it's a mineral. It's something we need in our bodies. And then the sound machine is the Marpac Dome. It's MARPACDOHM as in Mary, or it's also called Yoga Sleep. Yoga, like the exercise. And yes, magnesium for an adult, if adults can take the Calm gummies, but adults, if you're over 150 pounds, you would take 250 milligrams of MAG. I think it's MAG, magnesium sulfate. And if you're under 150 pounds, you would only take 250 of the magnesium sulfate.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that. So we had lots of questions around kids who are resistant to trying some of these strategies. Some, one says, my high school student doesn't seem to care about school. How can I create accountability on their part or get them to try some of these recommendations? Others say their kids are just not willing to try some of these strategies. Well, what can parents do?
Well, first of all, I'm much different parent than, I always try to tell my kids, you know what, we don't want to do a lot of things in life, but we have to do them. And take the phone away for a period of time so that they become engaged. Find out why they don't want to do it. Is it because it's too hard looking? I have found that if you break it down and you prioritize and identify exactly what is the most important thing you want from your child to do. Is it a chore? Is it their homework? Then break that down and make that your only win for that week. And you have to incentivize them. Bribes, as Hal always says, threats and bribes. You got to incentivize them. And a lot of times they just want to do well. I mean, the high schoolers, if are they not interested because they're exhausted? Are they even? How is their quality of sleep? How is their? I mean, there usually is a reason why they're just kind of, I don't want to do that. I think that's kind of, I don't know. I have my opinion on that stuff, but what were you going to, I mean, and the kids that are anxious and overwhelmed, you got to clump and chunk things. Like the child comes home, I have so much homework and I have a sport tonight. Okay. What part of that homework can I help you with? Can we do together? Is there something you need to bring to school tomorrow? Kind of go through it with them and then clump and chunk it into small pieces. Overwhelm is like the story of our lives. We are overwhelmed with typical tasks. That's why you want to try to break it down and put it in paper for them. Make a little chore chart for them, or a to-do list or something. Like do one thing and then yay, and then remind them of how good that feeling feels when they've accomplished it.
That kind of leads to the next question, which is, you were saying to help your child. Someone says, I want to help my teen be more independent, but I can't always tell whether I'm enabling her or supporting her independence.
Well, and I would say that's really an individual question that you're going to have. That would probably be like a one-on-one thing, because sorry about the hammering. But what you have to do is make sure that the student find out how needy is this child. I mean, they're all so different. Independent, are you meaning like, can she get up and do her own laundry? Independent meaning, does she able to get up and go to school on time? I mean, that's a big problem for some of my patients. They can't even get up without their parent in there. I mean, that's a part of independence. And so I guess it really depends on what specifically she's talking about. I mean, independent in that she can go do an errand on her own, or independent that she gets up on her own without mom and dad.
Mm-hmm. I suspect that something like she can't get up without mom or dad.
Okay. And then in that case, I mean, I had a parent that was going in and giving their child a massage every morning and then breakfast in bed. I mean, that's enabling.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, try the sound machine and the alarm clock. I had 2 patients in the last 2 weeks that, because of the optimal sleep, both patients did markedly better in school. They had better quality sleep, so they were way more in check. They got up in a better mood. The sunrise alarm clock is a total game changer for those kids that don't want to get up, because it's biochemical. It's a biology, it's your circadian rhythm. So.
Okay.
So I think that, that's why so much of the coaching is so individualized, because, getting up and getting out of bed, yeah, that's a huge deal. That's a big thing in your whole life. But to those parents, I would say, set an alarm at 5, set an alarm at 6, or whatever, at 5 to 6, try the sunrise alarm, take the phone out of the room at night. I would say that, being a parent is hard, and being a good parent is really hard. And, it's a lot of work. I mean, you gotta kind of put in the, strategies for success, which would be optimal sleep wake, take the phone out of the room, incentivize them. If you do this, do the hardest thing first. And if you do that and you do it well, awesome. You get this reward. Or, get them a tutor if the work is hard. That's not enabling at all.
Mm-hmm. We had a few questions around whether parents should allow their kids to listen to music while studying and doing homework. Some parents were for this, but they said their spouse felt that it wasn't a good idea. What's your suggestion about that?
Well, like I said during the webinar,
Mm-hmm.
It's a great thing if you manage it. So you have them make a playlist of 30 to 40 minutes and then move the phone in another room. So the music's playing on a remote speaker. Okay. Do not play. I'm not a fan of playing the music from your phone with your phone sitting there. No, that doesn't work, because they end up checking their text messages and they're all distracted. But if you have a little speaker, all those kids have, a lot of kids have those little speakers, those little portable speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Put the speaker in there and have them do their homework, and then put the phone in the other room so that they're not distracted by adding and subtracting songs on a playlist.
Okay.
Because the music, will stimulate the dopamine and calm and focus. So actually, I always tell my patients, how do you study best? Do you like the music? Does it help you get in a hyper focus, or is it distracting? And they're 50%, 50%.
So one parent asked, how can I best handle it when the stimulant wears off and my child still needs to do homework in the evening?
Okay, so that's a great question. They're all great questions. That's a really good one. When the stimulants are wearing off, there's two schools of thought here. You can either give that child some caffeine, like a Celsius drink, some not sugar, but caffeine, around 2 o'clock. No, do not give any caffeine or stimulants after 2 or they won't sleep. So if you give them caffeine around 2, that'll help taper off with that stimulant coming out of their body and kind of, provide that stimulation, you know what I mean, to get them through their homework. Also, if they could go do a sport when that is wearing off. And if they don't do sports, run around the house 10 times, do a little trampoline, the mini jogging trampolines. Those are great to stimulate some dopamine and get that energy back up there. Because when the stimulant wears off, sometimes they have rebound ADHD symptoms sometimes.
Okay. One caregiver writes, I have ADHD, which just makes it harder to set up and stick to routines for my kids. Do you have any advice?
So she has ADHD?
Yes.
Well, it's like the oxygen mask thing. Remember? It's like, you got to take care of you first. So she needs to get herself organized. And with all those tools I said, the list, the reminders, and get up earlier and set your, plan to be everywhere 10 minutes early. And, she needs to do those things and then role model that behavior for the kids and then start to execute individualized plans for the kids. So once she starts doing that, it will evolve to the kids.
Okay. We had some questions or variations of questions around screen time. When kids come home from school, they're on their phone or they're on video games, and it helps them to relax after a day at school. But then the parents say they have trouble getting them off the screens to do their homework or chores. Do you have suggestions for how to handle that?
Yes. So I'm all about them coming home from school and just being on a phone or doing outside or watching, whatever, a video on TV for 30 to 40 minutes. They need that decompression time. It has been so hard all day to be focused and on point, right? So they can come home and just kind of let that happen. But at 40 minutes, they need to have an alarm set on their phone, or a parent has to have an alarm, or a caregiver, nanny, whoever, and get that phone. They need to put the phone away. It needs to go back to the docking station, turn it upside down, or there are those alarms, those smart minders on the phone where you can control the use of screen time with the parental control thing, like turn it off. But that's a lot to do it over and over. So I would just say that confiscate the phone. And then they start the homework for 30 to 40 minutes, followed by a 10-minute break. And that 10-minute break is not electronics.
Okay. Yeah.
And also, what I've done myself, and I know people think this is me, I've actually shut down from remotely my kid when they on her app, on the Verizon app, I was able to deactivate her phone. She could call 911 obviously or something like that, but I was like, this is not okay. And she learned pretty quick that I was serious. So you can actually deactivate their phone from your provider, your cellular provider for a period of time to prove your point. Like, look, if you're not going to follow these rules, I'm doing this for you so you can learn this, because it takes 30 days to make a habit. So once they get in the habit of doing this kind of practice, it's going to, pay me now or pay me later. They're going to do awesome in high school and college if they start to develop this self-discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So I say incentivize, set boundaries, let them know how serious that, you are, that they need, that the phone is a complete, the recommendation, by the way, is 90 minutes for elementary. And I think it's 120 minutes of screen time that's not on a computer doing work, that's because that's a screen too. Mm-hmm. Recreational screen time is 90 minutes to 2 hours, 90 for elementary. I mean, like 4 through 6, little kids, it's like 30 to 60 minutes. The American Academy of Pediatrics has more details.
Okay. Lately, a caregiver writes her 14-year-old has been experiencing a ton of anxiety, and he's showing lots of anger and low tolerance to noises, such as other people chewing. How can I help this child self-regulate in the middle of a panic attack?
Okay, that, first of all, the chewing thing is it's a very common theme that I've been seeing with kids with ADHD and anxiety. anxiety, when people are angry and having anger, stuff like that, depression manifests a lot of times as anger in elementary and teenage kids. So I would probably make sure this child is seen by a pediatrician or a pediatric psychiatrist first, because then we want to make sure we're dealing with the right diagnosis. Because if this child is depressed or has severe anxiety, there might be different you might manage that differently than if someone who has just severe ADHD. That would be my first response to that. Would be to make sure we have the right diagnosis. Then, that person probably also needs some talk therapy to learn how to, sorry about the hammering. That person probably needs to, I would say get the right diagnosis and then have psychotherapy for the anxiety, panic attacks. There's nothing I can really say that's just going to change those. But I will say the Calm Magnesium Gummies is incredibly effective with managing some patients' anxiety and that quick panic they get. I know for a fact for a couple of students who are struggling with driving, this helped them kind of get calm because it's a smooth muscle relaxer, so I would say that would be a big thing for that one specifically, because there's a lot of things going on there, and even an occupational therapist to help with the loud noises as well.
Okay, well, unfortunately, that has to be our last question because we're out of time. But thank you so much for joining us today and for contributing your expertise to this ADHD community.
Thank you.
And make sure you don't miss future Attitude webinars, articles, or research updates by signing up to receive our free email newsletters at attitudemag.com/newsletters. If you're listening in replay or podcast mode, visit attitudemag.com and search podcast 445 to access the slides, the webinar replay, the certificate of attendance option, and the webinar transcript. If you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe to sign up for our latest spring issue. Sign up now for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. Thank you.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.
If you're in business, you probably have a website, but can your site handle your growth? How many visitors before your site slows down or crashes? What about storage and data security? From web hosting to virtual servers, Pair Networks provides the online infrastructure you need to start, grow, and flourish. When it comes to security and updates, don't worry, we've got you covered. Our 24/7 US-based customer support is the best in the industry. No frustrating chatbots or sitting on hold for hours. Check out pair.com today to learn more. That's PAIR.com.